door is the one that's open there. And then the seats are kind of against the sides, and you just come to place, you sit on someone's lap, whatever. This was our most common mode of transportation. Absolute luxury. Absolute luxury. The park on top, as you can see, is ragged and torn. And then, of course, here they are actually inside. This is how we rode there. We're going to a health expo, as you can see, so there's lots of supplies, even a little bit of ice for some cool water, and some of the team there, as well as some local folks. One unique thing that they did that I've never seen done before was every night after the meeting, we're talking about the evangelistic meeting, so after the meeting it was 9 to 9:30. It didn't start till something well after 7. After the meeting, they would provide food. These are boxes of food, those little boxes you see there. These are a meal. So as people would come out, they would hand them a box. And inside is a little tiny something you could use as a spoon, a fork, whatever. And they eat the rice with a little bit of sauce. One night they didn't even prepare that. They just gave us 13 pieces of fruit, which is very nice. I was vegetarian, so I eat well with fruit. But I don't know really if the concept is fellowship or if it's a way to encourage people to come. I never could quite figure it out, but it was non-negotiable. When they do things, this is what they do. And they did it. And they had a group of people in sort of a youth camp that they have preparing all this food. Can you imagine? And then some nights we would do our presentation. I would do my presentation. I only know mine. There were 8 sites, but I can only really talk about mine. And somehow they would get word to the translator that the food wasn't there yet. And so we had to just keep going, either questions or something, because they didn't want to release the people until the food had arrived. Sabbath, they do potlucks sometimes too. One thing you ladies might find interesting, I don't know if you can tell the plate that the person's holding there. It's some sort of almost a wicker type plate, and there's just a piece of paper inside. The idea is if you can throw the paper away, the plate can just be reused, right? So yeah, I see some, mission. This is mission service, right? And of course the food itself. Dear God, this may not really be ideal, but it's what we have, and you eat. Rice with something is the typical meals. Rice with whatever they have. Of course, there's always bananas, and then there's papaya and the fruits. But in Timor-Leste, the base was always rice, always rice. So this is the Health Expo sign. And what you'll notice here is the Adventist Church name is fairly prominent, bottom left corner. And they did that very deliberately. They wanted to make sure that people knew who it was that's sponsoring this, which is different than what some would do. And we did these in, 8 or 10 places. Here's one. The day we arrived, some of us arrived, they were already at work doing a health expo. And this is in a little mall kind of place where they found this little corner where they could be. And anytime it seems you put up the sign, you're busy. It's an amazing, amazing thing how that works. Here's one in the park. So you can imagine that, just under the trees. I told you it was hot, so liters of water that we would have to drink and keep hydrated. Here's one in a market, a busy market selling just about anything you can imagine. Clothes, used shoes, used clothes. Look at the crowd. This particular location, when we arrived, it was already basically full of people. Now, how do you set up for that? I mean, they were in there because it's shady, right? And so how do you displace them to be able to even set up so that you can then serve them? It was kind of a challenge, but we worked it out. Then we had to literally guard the gate and let people in only bit by bit. Otherwise, it just became chaos. No, it's Timorese. Maybe Portuguese, probably Portuguese.
So yeah, they speak Portuguese, those who have a certain age. Portuguese left in 75, and they started teaching the local language from 75 on. So some speak Portuguese, some speak the local language, and then some, very few, speak a little bit of English. Very unusual. That was a real challenge for us, was translators, especially at these events, because each doctor needs a translator, right? Each nurse, and so on. And so it's pretty intensive. So the lady in the green here in this the sweatshirt, t-shirt, is a doctor, Rachel, and they discovered that people had to wait, of course, to see the doctor or whatever. And so she would just, and others did it too, stand there and just do a little health lecture while they're waiting. Because the problems are often very similar, right? Dehydration, and so on. So they would talk about those things while they wait, and if somebody gets called away, well, they get called away, and then somebody joins, and it just goes on like that. Here are some doing blood pressures, blood sugar, and so on. These are the banners they had set up for the kind of the New Start type theme is the way they did it. This fellow in the picture, you notice Hope Channel on his sleeve. He works for the church, he's a pastor. I think he's the first local pastor, because the church has only been there 10 or 15 years. It's a fairly new, the Adventist church has only been there that period of time. I put this in just for the fun of it. Some of you know what that is. About $1, you can get a coconut. They'll cut it open for you, give you the water, and then split it in half, and then you can have the meat too, right? You get both, so it's a double, two for one. Another place we did the Health Expo was at the university. Can you imagine? At the university, and that's where this is, a big open auditorium at the university. And look at the kids lined up. Those in white are nursing students coming to the Health Expo of the Adventist Church. How about that? Pretty nice. This one also is in that same area. Again, you see the white uniforms and all. What I can't understand or couldn't understand, what we know about college, it's a very busy time, right? Where here you'd have kids, you see them up there on the back, way up in the back, on both sides, on the left as well, just hanging out, middle of the day. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they left at some point, but anyway. We had a nurse practitioner, pediatrician, and so she looked at some children. So that was kind of neat. We had fun doing that, and it was a blessing. They were able to have the doctors were able to do some health lectures at the university. So it's the East Timor University at Unital. But you'll notice that purple sign, you'll see it again. That's our theme. That's our poster for the series that we were doing there. Timor-Leste for Christ is what it says on that purple sign. This is kind of cool. Obviously, this is a dentist, and I thought you'd like to see the chair. One of those zero-gravity chairs, right? What's holding the chair up? Cement blocks. Cement blocks. So there we are. That's how the dentist worked. And then what about the dental assistant? That's her son, actually. Here's another one. This is not the family, but she's probably about 15 years old, this girl. The other thing they did was they said they were doing dental cleanings, and it turns out that really what they were doing was brushing their teeth, and people would line up for it. It's amazing. The need is so great. A lot of teeth needed to be pulled on these very young people. That surprised me. And I guess part of it is they do have access to sugar cane. Need I say more? All right, this is pretty interesting stuff here. Timor-Leste Adventist International School. See it? 2015. This is your school. This school was built from your mission funds. There it is again. I love TAIS, Timor Adventist International School. I love Timor Adventist International School. I was noticing, excuse me for noticing, but some of the pictures of this morning, those of you that were here, our school. Here, I have a picture I could give you of the sign at their school at the gate. There's only one gate to enter. And at the gate are the rules. And the rules are very specific. You know, no bad language, not certain foods, not certain things on your body. Very interesting. Very interesting. Here we struggle with all of that. There's the buildings that our 13th Sabbath offering monies built about 8 or 10 years ago. About 300 students in this school. The meetings that I did were in the little auditorium, worship room, whatever, of this school. And they already have a little church meeting there. This is the children's program in that school. Look at that, how many kids that is. They had so much fun. They had recorded some children's music, and they played that, and the kids would sing it in English. Imagine that? These kids singing in English. I don't know how much they really understood of what they sang, but they sang and had a lot of fun. This is the craft time of those kids. This one actually came with video, with sound, and notice where the kids are sitting. This happens to be a church in a very, very poor district. So there's no chairs or anything, for the kids at least, in the sanctuary. So they're sitting on the floor, but again, if you could hear them sing, they sing very, very enthusiastically. This one I threw in because that's me, of course, on the right. Excuse the hat. This couple, these kids on the left, are the two of those children that you see there. In fact, the dress is the same. But the parents were baptized as a result of our effort in Timor-Leste. The lady, has a sister who is an Adventist and was really praying and hoping that they would come. This is the Sabbath morning church. I'm on the platform. This is looking at the congregation. Remember, this is the school auditorium. Hard to imagine how hot it was in there. Put this in so that, just to remind us that everything, especially when you're on mission trips, everything is about prayer. If you aren't praying, you aren't doing it right, because there's so many problems, so many things that come up. I put this one in so you could see. Anything you'd identify in this picture that's unusual? Yeah. I think you may be trying to see, but yeah, you notice the flashlight. The point is there's no electricity, and they're used to it. So you're having, it would go on and off. So you're having your meeting and the power goes off. I mean, here it would be a big to-do, right? There, several will flip on their flashlight and hardly miss a beat. Just keep right on going. In fact, they even have speakers set up that are battery powered so that you can use a microphone with a speaker and even have that if you should need it. Pretty used to it. Yeah, it's rolling blackouts, you know. There's not enough power in the country to produce to supply what they need. Really too bad. So ultimately, of course, there was a baptism in the ocean, and you can't really see, but I'm there on the left of the picture somewhere. So the conference president is a missionary, and so he chose the spot. And I don't know anything about anything, but the spot they gave me, the bottom under the water was rocks, not hard rocks, but round, small, large gravel, you would say, like inch. So it moved all the time. There was no way. And then these waves, you can see, look at that wave. When those waves came in, I mean, so they had, you can't really see, but they had sent someone out, a deacon, to help hold us up so we could hold the candidate up. And then, of course, they tried to time it. We were going to try to baptize 4 or 5 of us at the same time. They tried to coordinate it so that we could baptize them between the waves. Good luck, right? So one poor lady, in my case, she got baptized at least twice. So she should be well baptized, right? Anyway, This is mission service. There are no baptistries. This is their only option. And a very nice one, nice and refreshing even. That's the ocean. That's the deep blue sea. Yep. North side of the island. I'm not sure. So 38 were baptized that day. 3 more joined by profession of faith, happened to be in the congregation where I was, which, by the way, was the first time they had ever experienced profession of faith. They had never heard of that concept before, of someone joining by profession of faith. So the conference president had to come and work with the church in session a little bit to help them understand that this is something that church policy allows and is a good plan and can be used in certain circumstances. So 38 plus 3 is 41, and then the next Sabbath they baptized another 6 or 8. Now remember, their total membership is about 600. Their active membership is probably about 300. So if you add 40, let's say 50 to make it easy, it's a significant bump, real encouragement for them. So it was a real blessing. This is an exciting picture. These are the baptismal candidates. We gave each one of them a Bible in the Timorese language. And here they are, excitedly holding up their Bible. They'll be able to read the Bible at home. What do you say? Such a blessing. They gave them a little time on Sabbath afternoon to share their stories. And it's interesting because, same as here, almost all of them were led to baptism through the impact of people working with them. One, I remember they fell ill, actually in a different town, but our people were able to send someone to the hospital in a different town, and that apparently helped to really impress them. And as a consequence, ultimately, with time, they joined God's Last Day Church. The nice thing about mission service is no matter what your skills are, there's something you can do. You've seen we have the health expo part of it, if you're a health person. If you're not, I was still involved and I'm not. There's the children's ministry part of it, which is very important. Then the preaching part of it. Then there's the prayer part of it. Some people, that may be their strength, is they can be available and with the team and praying and making a real difference. So there's something everyone can do, and God uses us. I should have told you the story. I showed you the airplane there of us landing. So leaving out of Florida here, our flight didn't go. We boarded the plane in the evening, of course. It's what these flights are usually. We boarded the plane about 6 o'clock, 5:36, and when we should have left, the pilot came on and said that in putting our baggage into the plane, they apparently touched the plane and there was a little scratch. That's what he said, a scratch, like a thumbnail scratch is what he said. If you went and looked at it, you'd hardly even see it on the side, outside of the plane. And so he said, we're gonna have to get somebody to come and inspect this. And so we waited an hour maybe and came on finally a couple hours later, and he said, they've measured it and inspected it, and it's right on the line of being able to go or not being able to go. So they're going to have it reevaluated. This is Sunday night, if I remember right. So you know what that means. They let us leave the plane if we wanted to, but why would you leave? I mean, you're going to go in 30 minutes, right? So 5 hours later, literally 11:30, I think it was, he came on and said, this plane can't fly. So they sent us all to a hotel and said, go get some rest and then call and try and make your plans. Well, for me, the good thing was that original flight was going to take me to San Francisco, then from there to Indonesia, and then or some other place on the way to Indonesia, and then from there, of course, to Dili. Well, when I worked out the change, They put me on Air Emirates, which had a direct flight from Orlando to Dubai, and then, of course, Dubai to Indonesia. So 2 flights instead of 3, or 3 instead of 4. So that worked out. But the real thing was, as this is all going down, Sunday and Monday, we're hearing about other members of the team that were also traveling, of course, trying to get there. And one lady particularly, her flight took off, and within an hour or so of Bali, Indonesia, was turned back because they'd had a volcanic eruption and they couldn't trust it, whatever. Others, just their flights couldn't go. But they were already off somewhere and stranded, where at least we were in Orlando. I was in Orlando for the overnight. And then, of course, my flight went right through. When we got to Dubai, I went and asked specifically, if we were going to go on. And the agents there were like, what's the question, And that's exactly what happened. We went right on through. But here's the team, 33 of us. Some came later, some left sooner. So we took this picture kind of in the middle when the most of us were together. And like I say, 8 locations and 40-some baptisms. You're all familiar, I guess, with the Hawaiian lei. In these countries, it's the same thing. So this, you see, is what they're all wearing. This was our little goodbye. Usually it seems they do it at the beginning. And of course, indeed they did. So I had one from the beginning too. The first night, they had to give me this before you could preach or anything, right? So there's that. Here's a little, since we're few, you guys can see this well. A young man, probably in the 8th grade, he could speak a fair amount of English, and so I'd greet him and chat with him a little bit each night and whatever. He asked for a picture of me. And so then you can take this and pass it around. This is what he gave to me. This is his gift to me, my departure gift. Pretty incredible. Yes. So these are the kinds of things, to us, it's nothing. I don't mean it that way, but you know what I'm saying? We'll probably never see these people again, except in God's kingdom, right? But to these people, I mean, it's life and death. It's a real difference. It really does impact them in a powerful way. Now, you probably noticed that I'm without shoes. I did that deliberately because there you don't wear shoes, right? You have to leave them at the door. It's a matter of respect. So no one wears shoes in church, women, men, anybody. Sacred. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Hindus, of course, would do that as well. But so that tradition has come into our church. So you preach, you do everything. And of course, most of the time people are barefooted. There are no socks, most of the time. Some of us wore socks sometimes or did whatever. The same is true for India as far as the shoes. The same thing. No shoes are worn in the church. So no matter what you bring to church, you're going to leave them outside. And so, all right, any questions about Timor that you've thought of that I didn't answer? Small country, only 1.3 million people, something like that. Poverty-wise, it's fairly impoverished, not terrible, but not at all wealthy. Secure, no real issue with security. We have an Adventist missionary there now leading the church, and I think they're going to see some real church growth under his leadership because there's connection now with people outside, where before they've just kind of been on their own. That's a good question. Of course, my group was fairly well educated. There was engineers and people like that. Oh, thank you. But generally speaking, some of the other sites reported exactly the opposite. Just basically uneducated people at all. I think we said that before you came, but we'll repeat it. So somebody can help her. How many? How many? We didn't have any real problems. So about 97% Catholic. It's the most Catholic country in the world after Vatican City. So that's why the Pope comes there. Nice people, nice people. Motorbikes, we could talk about lots of things, but okay, let's go to India. So the man standing is they call it their section president. It's not conference. The conference, I should say, this entity, this organization that they're coordinating, isn't strong enough to be a conference. But for us, it would be a conference, okay? So it's a becoming conference. They call it section. So he's the section president in charge of multiple churches, pastoring multiple churches in that area. And he's giving us here our welcome. The fellow sitting is Chris Donovan, and he's the coordinator. Now, this trip was Jesus for Asia. The Timor-Leste trip was organized through It Is Written. So totally different entities coordinating, very different approaches, very different, lots of different things. Anyway, that's who you've got there. This is at the section office. Some of our team was able to stay there. Some of us, there were too many, we couldn't all stay there. So our purpose in India, and we're in South India, was to restart four specific churches that had been closed, apparently because of lack of attention. I don't really know why. And so Jesus for Asia had worked with them in advance and had them all repainted and fixed up. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that cute? Nice little church. Here it is decorated for our Health Expo. That poster by the door is the Health Expo poster. So it's the same church, but with the Health Expo poster. Most of these churches have been built through some sort of sponsorship. I don't know if you can read that, but built by Quiet Hour International in this case. I saw one built by a family that they sponsored that church, and so on. And then they'll have, of course, the names of the pastors. This one was opened in 2004, so 21 years ago, this church was built. Oh, by the way, you said the name, right? Peetham Patty. Peetham Patty, yep. Actually, it was a lady who preached at this church. So, ladies, you can do it. So, Health Expo, this is, again, that same section president and his wife. Then the lady with the gold or yellow shawl, she's a doctor. And this was the only day that we had a doctor with us in this case. This trip we had kind of scarce on the medical people. So she was a real blessing that day. That I don't know, she traveled a fair distance is what I was told to come and be there. So we had 7 or 8 different stations where the people would go. I helped often with the breathing test to see their lung capacity, and it was terrible. Probably like ours, actually. Pretty bad. Because they don't climb hills or anything. In South India, it's very flat. They grow a lot of rice. Rice grows where you can flood it, right? And so it's very flat, generally speaking. So they walk a lot, but they're not really breathing a lot. You didn't know what I mean by that. And so their respiration capacity was very, very low. One of the stations talked about air and so on, and so we would offer to pray with the people. So straight ahead is one of our missionary young men, and the pastor to the left is one of the pastors. He was actually my translator, did a very good job, very good job. Here we did 4 meetings, 4 sites. So here's another church called the Body Church, and it was so hot that they decided to put up this little tarp just for the day to give people a waiting area with a little bit of shade. This was right in the country. Cows walk by, whatever. So this is supposed to be humorous, so here we go. Now, she's on that breathing machine test thing, so she's not smoking. She's trying to inflate that thing, but I kind of stole this picture. Supposedly, you're all ladies, so whatever you think, she reported that she's my age. What do you say? Yeah, absolutely. She's older too. It's rough. It's a rough life, walking everywhere you go and not sure where your next meal is going to come from and so on. But not a lot of older people. Not a lot of people our age. Any of us. Not that I'm dating any of you, but all right, here we go. This is another of the churches we worked with, Arasadi Vandal. Now this one was another church they're trying to restart, and the Bible worker that worked with my church, which you're going to see in a moment, and this one, it's kind of in this same area, 10 miles apart, 8 miles apart, whatever it is. And so the day before we were to do the health expo thing at this church, she was visiting some people in town. And I don't know how it came down, but she was told that we would just do well to not come to that church. And so we did not come to that church for the health expo. But we waited a day or two, and apparently the conference brethren there went and made some contact, and I'm not sure, but they cleared us and we went. We did do the health expo very successfully in that church. I took this picture for the girls out the window. They were having fun trying to see in what was going on inside the church. Isn't that wonderful when people want to get into church, but can't even? So, yeah. So this is one of the lady missionaries, and the gentleman on the right was a translator. Like I say, translation was a real challenge often for us. Not a lot of people speak English well enough to really understand and translate well. All right, everybody, especially ladies, ask about the food. So there is the food, and I suppose you know the names of it, right? So on the right, you have your little rice patty. You notice there's a banana leaf beneath it. So I don't know if you know about this, but we would call it old wives' tales, but they believe that it's healthful. There's a health benefit to eating off the banana leaf. Okay? But I learned that there's a lot of benefits to eating off the banana leaf, because if you don't have a plate, you can do it on the table. If you don't have a table, you can do it on the floor. I'm serious. So the banana leaf in South India is just part of the meal. It's provided with the meal, and you eat off the banana leaf. Normally, you'll put, there's 3 curries, and then your samba in the little tin pail. So you put the samba with your rice patty, and of course you eat with your right hand, right? You eat with your hand, not a spoon or fork, and you just, however you do it, you get it to your mouth. Then, of course, rice the same way. That's kind of an economy meal. Here's one a little more luxurious. So this is the way they bring it to you, in a silver platter, and each of these little cups of your chutney and your, and then the rice they'll put in the middle. Then you can put your sauces on as you wish, and yes, some of those are curries, yep. And usually, the white one, see the white one at the edge on the left? That's yogurt or some sort of curd, because, and it's true, it seems, that the yogurt helps to cool the fire afterwards. So you usually save that to towards the end and try to calm your lips at least a little bit with it. So here's one where we ate in someone's house, and they put it right on the table, the banana leaf. So you eat your meal, and so in the restaurant, they call it a meal, And so you just order the meal, maybe. You order the meal, then they bring you the banana leaf, they'll bring you the rice, and they'll bring you the curries and so on. And if you eat up any one of them, you finish up the green curry, for example, they'll bring you more if you want more. You eat up the samba, they'll bring you more. You eat up the rice, they'll bring you more till you're done. And when you're done, you fold the leaf in half, kind of cover it. That's your symbol, your sign that you're through, you're satisfied. And they won't. The other thing that's really different in the restaurant there is that normally, like if 4 of you are eating at a table, somebody's standing there literally watching you almost the whole time. And it's because they're watching to see if you need anything. So you don't have to ask, they'll just bring it and offer it. I mean, you can refuse, but they want to be proactive in making sure you're served, right? So it's one price, all you can eat, unless you order, something special. And then this guy got it for free. I was surprised how many monkeys we saw crossing the road, side of the road, different places, just monkeys. This guy, I saw him come down and steal this out of the trash can, jump up here on the wall where he'd be safe, and just tip it right up. He knew what to do. I didn't meet anybody that did. Generally, the feeling I had was they didn't really like them. They didn't trust them. They're considered thieves. They're cute, but like one day I was somewhere and the monkeys were kind of getting close, and I call them our handlers. They were a little concerned, wanted us to kind of move away. They're too close to the monkeys. So anyway. I don't know. Probably. It could be. The cow, of course, is. The cow is another thing that'll just go. I don't think I included any pictures, but the cow will be just anywhere. Anywhere they want to. I mean, they will stop them, of course, from coming into the house or something like that, but otherwise they'll be in town, they'll be anywhere, and crossing, I should say, in the road, and traffic will blow their horn, whatever, but they'll just go around the cow and keep going. And dogs, basically the same way. Dogs, quite a few dogs, hungry dogs, just laying. You can walk right by them. Often they'll hardly move because they're just so starved. Anyway, she's cutting the coconut. You know how that works. So, yeah, this is something I thought you might enjoy. This is the church I worked at. There's this little container sitting there in the corner of the church, in the front, by the organ, let's say. No organ, of course. And then one night I saw this boy come up. He found this little cup, reached in, pulled it out, drink from it. You drink without touching your lips, put the cup back for the next person. How about that? So, just water. Just water. I mean, we won't ask how clean it is, or that's another question. Okay, anybody know what this is? Your bus. Good guess. What? This is, we would call it a hearse. So when somebody dies, they'll be put in the back. It's built up usually. There's 3 of them sitting there side by side across the road to get this picture. But they're a bit everywhere. You see the speaker up on top where they'll celebrate, for the person as they drive through town, whatever, and display the body there in the back and so on for a price. This is a very common scene. Anybody guess what it is on the truck? Rice? Close. And far. Sugarcane. Sugarcane. Look how they loaded it, though. That truck's probably 40 years old. Very old trucks. Amazing. And yet run well. They don't smoke a lot. So here's your rice. I'm sorry, this is potatoes. They grow a lot of potatoes there. That was a surprise to me. One area particularly. And onions. Lots of onions. And then this is your sugar cane again. Behind the tractor, right down the road. Tractor's in what we would call the fast lane. One thing I learned is the tractor has right-of-way. He has no lights in the back at all. Day or night, there's no lights in the back. So he has no clue what's behind him. He just drives. Of course, that's true for most drivers there. They offered me to drive 2 different times, once a motorcycle and once a car, and I refused both times. The problem is that the rules of the road are so different. What I mean by that is there are rules, but they're assumed rules. And so you have to know what those are. For example, you're in the gas station, you got gas, you're coming back to the street. What would you do? You come up to the street, you stop, you look, make sure it's clear, then you go. What would they do? They would just drive out slowly, 10 miles an hour, and just drive into the street. Because if you're ahead of him, even though he's going 40 miles an hour, if you're ahead of him, he'll yield to you. There's another lane, or there's a ditch, or there's whatever. I mean, you know. So you have the right of way because you're ahead of him. That's the way it seems to work. And so you're driving down the road, and all of a sudden, here's a car coming right towards you in your lane. Well, that's okay. They want to go that way instead of that way. I mean, that's your business. You won't hit him, will you? You're going to get hurt if you hit him, so you're not going to hit him. Of course, you're going to go around, or you're going to slow down and let him by, whatever. That's the way it works. And then there's dogs, and there's monkeys, and there's cows, and there's bicycles, and there's motorbikes, and there's cars, and they're coming from any direction, any time, and but you just stay on the horn, and as long as you've announced that you are coming through, generally speaking. And then the other thing is they will drive within 6 inches of each other, literally. I mean, they're just so close. And as long as you don't touch, everyone's happy, right? You didn't hit, so it's okay. I didn't see any. Mostly flat there, where I was. So you're familiar with the rickshaw, right? You've heard about it in the past, the bicycle. Well, this is called the auto rickshaw. So this has a motor, of course, but it's still 3 wheels. And this guy gave us a ride to the hotel, and so I asked him if I could take his picture, and he let me do that. These are everywhere. That's the other thing that's everywhere. So as soon as you slow down at a traffic light, in a car, now the motorbikes come through, and the rickshaws come through if they can, or even if you're going, if they can squeeze between, they will, and so on. And it's just whoever is ahead is the one who goes. It's just that way. And it's a lot of fun to see, but until it's not so fun. The other thing that was interesting to me in India is how many vehicles are electric, or compressed natural gas, or of course diesel. A lot more than here. This is a little taxi we had, and he's filling it with compressed natural gas. Apparently, this particular car will run either way, compressed natural gas or with gasoline. So he'd run out of the compressed natural gas, so he was getting some more, even though he had the petrol to run. This is absolute order. Look at the wires. Very, very common. Very, very common. Then this is the Indian lei, or the Indian, what do they call it? Same thing. But they're flowers. All those red, and there's about 5 or 6 there hanging together. All those red ones are rose petals. I don't know how they attach them together. They smell very, very nicely. And then, of course, the yellow at the bottom is flowers as well. So they would hang, at least down to your waist. Maybe this is the time to talk about this one. So here's one they gave me. This is the most luxurious we've seen. Imagine that. The other one they gave was this one. So you can wear this any way you like, this way or some other way or whatever. Of course, for the women, again, we talked about the shoes off. The women will use this to cover their head in church. especially during prayer, but often all the time during church. Just kind of again, a cultural thing. I don't know why they gave me that without swinging the end. All right, here we go. Now we get to my church. My church, right? This is our little church. Do you notice what's right above where those people are standing? Can you tell? It looks like a speaker. It is a speaker. And it's not a little one, is it? It's huge. It's the only speaker the church has. And that's where it is. Outside, on the roof, aimed towards town, not inside the church. So if you benefit at all from the speaker inside, it's because it's so loud outside that you can hear it inside. How about that? And that's what the Hindus do, and the Muslims both. At any hour of the morning, they'll start, blasting whatever over the speaker. So I guess our churches have accommodated that, just assimilated that. And so we do the same thing. Before the meeting even starts, they'll just play music over the speaker so that the whole town gets to hear. Here's the inside of our church and some of our missionaries and others. The little lady beside me was our Bible worker. The gentleman on the other side of me is a fellow that works with Hope Channel. No, I'm sorry, he works with Jesus for Asia. On the right is our pastor that translated for that event. Yeah. This was our congregation. We had 10 chairs, 10 plastic chairs for the church, for the platform, for the audience, 10 chairs. And so you can see where most of them are sitting. And it was amazing to me to see, because in the evening, mostly ladies, as you can see, mostly ladies, but they would come in late. So we would delay to start till 7:30, 7:45, 8 o'clock, and even then, many more would come in after. Apparently they're getting back home from working in the fields or whatever, and then come to church. But it was amazing to see these old ladies that would come in and just get right down on the floor. Like no problem. Kind of a interesting thing. Here they are again. All right. This is exciting. We gave Bibles to some of our participants. The lady on the left is our Bible worker. But it was an exciting night for these people when they got a Bible of their own in the Tamil language, the language they speak, and some of them can read. So the idea being, though, that if they had a Bible, somebody might read it to them, in their home. And of course, I gave them some suggestions as to where to start reading, read the stories, which is another thing I should say. I had never done meetings this way. The outlines they gave us were stories. Each night was part of the story of the Bible. So the first night we told the creation story, all 7 days of creation, just, overview. And we just kept emphasizing that the Bible is really just a story, right? I don't mean a made-up story, but it's the story of how God has worked with people. And those stories really happened. There really is a creator God. That's what we're trying to do, is differentiate the God of creation with the Hindu God. Hindus, they don't have a God. They just choose a God. Whatever it is their God, whatever they choose. Across from one of our little hotels was 3 Hindu temples in the same little corner. I mean, each one probably a temple to a different, fertility or harvest or rain or, whatever. But our God is the creator God. Our God, these stories of what he did, how he intervened in people's lives are really true things. They really did happen, right? And if God could do it then, why can't he do something now? Which is a lesson absolutely for us, right? Even this morning we were talking about things God did in the past, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, why don't we think he can do that now? Why don't we think he can do it now? Why don't we pray for it now? Couldn't he do the same thing now if we would ask? If he could feed the Israelites for 40 years in the wilderness, give them food and water every day in the desert where there's nothing, can he not do something for us? If we, you know what I mean, in our time of need. And of course, we know about free will and all that. But so the concept here was night by night to tell them the stories of the Bible, to try to build faith that this creator God of love that we're talking about really cares about the creation that he made. He made us for relationship with him. And look what he did for Daniel. Look what he did for, down through the Bible story. So that's the way that did. And that's why the Bible, we felt, was so very important for people. And I should say, Bibles are becoming harder to get there. I'm trying to remember, I think we were trying to order 500, and they cut us down to 250, and it ended up that we actually got 196. And they had to kind of search those out to even find them, because the government is somehow controlling the Bibles that are printed and how they're distributed. So you can do it in the church like this, it's no real problem. But if you were to take them out on the street or take them to someone's house and try to encourage them to have a Bible, that might be a little more frowned upon. Interesting, huh? One of the pastor's workers said, other literature might, in some cases, be easier to work with because Bible, everyone knows. Bible's a Bible. But if you gave them Steps to Christ, it's a book. And so it might not receive the same opposition. This lady on the right, so one night towards the end, I don't remember, Thursday or Friday night, towards the last Sabbath, they asked me to go. The Bible worker and the pastor took me from home to home to home. This is just before the meeting. So we started at like 5:45, and the meeting's supposed to be at 6:30 or 7, I don't know. And so we're walking, right? From the church, we're walking home to home to home and praying with people in their yard, in their home, wherever they would allow us. But the Bible worker knew these people, and so we were going to specific houses, specific families that she knew. So we got in this home, and in the yard, they told me about this lady on the right. Obviously, she's an elderly woman, but for quite some time, she has been confined to her bed. She couldn't get up. She couldn't really do anything. And the day we did the health expo at our church, the Major Church there, somehow they got her there. And she went through the process. And in the prayer area, they prayed with her. And a couple nights later, this is how I found her. Walking all around her house and yard, saw her outside, getting water. I mean, just as mobile as any of us. And an absolute miracle. I even took this little picture just as a reminder. That was her bed. That was her bed. But now she's up and about and around. Well, after the mission trip, they took us to Coimbatore, I can't even say it, and this is the church. Now, we talked about the shoes, so can you see them there? There's more on the right, in that little alcove area, but there are the shoes. Mine were probably there. So that's where you leave your shoes and you go in without your shoes. Beautiful church, isn't it? Yeah, and then this was Sabbath morning, Sabbath school time. And like I said, the covered head. But look at the flowers. Look at the flowers, real flowers. I don't know how that comes about. We had a great time with that little church family. Then they took us to Hope Channel, and this is in Chennai. We used to call it Madras. You heard that name. This is Chennai. So there's two buildings here. Where I took the picture from is where there's a church on the first floor and then some Hope Channel offices above it on the second floor. So I'm taking it across the little, what do you call it there? Space. You see Hope Channel symbol there. So Hope Channel started out here in this facility and did a good work. But the problem they found, Here's one of their studios. The problem they found was that it was a challenge for people to travel. India is a big country. And then, of course, you have language issues. I forgot the number. On their money, they have listed about 12 major languages, but then they have dialects and other languages. Can you imagine trying to unite a country with 12 languages, which means culture, right? So 12 very different cultures that you're trying to unite in one India. And then, of course, now you go to Hope Channel. How do you preach the message without getting into those languages? And so they started here in the South, and then they discovered that for our pastors to travel there and all, it was an expense and inconvenience. And so since they've started 2 other Hope Channel buildings that they can work out of, which is really, really nice. So when I arrived at Hope Channel here, they were having a training for Bible workers. These are Bible workers for Jesus for Asia, for Gospel Outreach. I'm sure you're familiar with that organization. If you're not, you should get acquainted. They do a great work sending local missionaries locally, which is a very cost-effective way. And then some Hope Channel missionaries as well, or Bible workers. So, I mean, if you can see here, look at this. This is the crowd of Bible workers that were there on a, whatever day it was, Tuesday or whatever. And so this fellow here that's beside me, I'm the green shirt or whatever color, he is the one that kind of coordinated some of my travel after the Jesus for Asia thing. And so he came out when I arrived, he came out and he greeted me and he said, would you be willing to talk to these people? See, that's the way it works in the mission field. So I came in and I shared with them for 10 or 15 minutes, just some encouragement and some of my experience as a literature evangelist and so on. There we are, translating, talking, trying to encourage them. So here is the Hope Channel India building in Hapur. Hapur is up by New Delhi. So now we've gone from the south of India to the north of India. It's interesting, a lot of the workers in the north of India that I met are also from South India. I don't know why it's that way, but that's what they all say. Quite a building, recently built. They have their own little property there. Across the street is a school, I'm going to show you in a moment. That's across the street. Next to them is our Adventist hospital, which is really struggling at the moment, but they even had a meeting the day after I left there. So they're trying to work with that, but so and then the section office again, conference office is there as well, and another church. So it's in a very good location. There's a studio in here and several offices, of course, and 4 or 5 young men, almost always young people, right, doing all this computer stuff. So this is the North India Union. I've talked to some of you personally, and you know my father went to India 50 years ago. And he went for the purpose of helping to sponsor the building of some churches and maybe some publishing work and things like that. So spending a night in this building is probably where he spent a night, more than a night. I only spent 1 night here, but he probably spent several there. And I had with me actually letters that he had addressed from this location. Pretty interesting. 50 years, literally 50 years ago. And then this is another of the offices in Hapur. Here's their section office. So the one a moment ago was the union office, which is several conferences supervised by the union. This is now a section office. So this has the offices apparently on the first floor and then housing above where the conference president, secretary, and treasurer can live, all in one building. And I'm taking this picture from the church. You can see the edge of the church here. Anyway, then the school, we were at the Hapur Mission School. I was told in New Delhi, which is, I don't remember, an hour and a half, 2 hours away, a taxi person, whatever, if you say, take me to the Hapur Adventist Mission School, they'll know right where to take you. It's that well known. So Hapur Mission School. So here we did 3 worships, Friday night, Sabbath morning worship, and Sabbath evening. This is the outside of that same building. They built it in 2 floors, of course, get more bang for the buck. And then next to the meeting room here is the cafeteria. I thought you'd be interested in this. Okay, I should mention, I was really impressed with this school. Very organized, very clean, very nice, and all the way through. The young people were dressed nicely, behaved nicely, everything I saw. And the principal is really on the ball. So what this is here, this is half or part of a chapati making machine. You know what chapatis are? Little bread that comes out like a pancake, but with no oil, unless there's a little bit in the batter. Can be the same batter, as I understand it, can be fried with oil, but that has a different name. This one is without oil. And so he said, we need to make 1,000 chapatis for these 300 and some kids. They each need 3 or more. He's trying to feed them really well. In addition to the chapati, they get, of course, rice and other things. But he said 1,000 chapatis, and he said, I saw my staff here sitting around a fire, a wood fire, cooking these chapatis. So they were able to obtain this machine. So you see the dough to his left, right? And then there's flour in the one in the middle. And so he makes the portion, puts a little flour on it, puts it in that hopper at the top, and it comes out as this little ball that you see at the right. So that's step 1. Then you go over, the balls go over to this machine. See the man's hand in the bowl? He's putting the balls in the top of this machine, and they come through, and they come out as chapatis. They can make 1,000 chapatis, according to what he says, in about an hour with these machines. It still takes 3 or 4 people. By the way, you notice where the chapatis are ending up, right? On the floor again. Yeah. I thought you'd be interested in the rice bowl. He's adding a little bit of spice or seasoning, but look at the size of that bowl. Pot, whatever you call it, over a wood fire. As I walked through the cafeteria, these girls were eating. This is a table of girls, I think all girls. And what are they doing? What position are they in? They stood up because I was walking by. Can you imagine? What respect. So I took their picture, and of course that made them very happy. So now for your investment, the school needs a new, they call it hostel. We would call it a dormitory for their boys. So what you see here is the new hostel laid out. Now, I wish I had a pointer. On the right, you see the square here on the right, not the one in the front, the one behind. Then there's another one beside it and another one beside it. That represents a room. That represents a room. The big square would be one room inside the hostel, yes. And that room will house 12 men. That's the way the girls are. 12 to a room. 150 girls, 12 rooms. There's probably more than 12 in some rooms. Can you imagine? And yet they come out looking beautiful and attractive and clean. They do a good job. Anyway, if you know someone that has a little extra money, the principal is asking for a little bit of help to help complete this building. This is the way they build overseas, right? As they start, they do as they have money to do. They don't borrow like we do. They just build as they can. And so he's gotten this far. And so what he wants to do is move the boys here, and the place where the boys are now would become staff housing. How can I say it respectfully? Staff housing for people that are on the lower end. So they would get an upgrade from where they are. I saw where they are. They need an upgrade. And the boys would be in a better position and where they need to be. They gave us a little bit of tourism. I don't know if you've ever heard of this place. Quite an amazing place. Yeah. What's unbelievable to me, I mean, this building, of course, is amazing, but all around it are other buildings that were built 300 years ago, more or less. I think this is about 300 years old, 350, 375. But all around it, like a campus, there are other buildings. And those buildings are almost as impressive as these. They're red sandstone, but still beautiful buildings, amazing walls, just a beautiful place. Sort of the capstone was a visit here, the land of the martyrdom of St. Thomas. Of course, that's my namesake, but it's believed that St. Thomas went to India, and this is the place where he saw his end. Of course, the Catholics, that's why I don't have but the one picture for you. The Catholics have made it a shrine and created all these stories that they found finger bones of his, and I think a tablet that he wrote and whatever, but so certain. But that he was there and that he probably died in this area, that's pretty certain. Even local Adventist authorities seem to support that. So that's quite a call that, where are we? He went to India to evangelize, right? To preach Christ. And that need is still there, massively. Our churches are small, generally speaking, even the ones by the conference office. I didn't put that picture in. A small church, probably 50 people, third, fourth of what we have here. That's what they have, So the need is huge. The need is huge. So anything we can do financially to support, anything we can do with time or talent, anything we can do, it seems like, that's one thing about missions. It seems like even though we're not terribly gifted, God multiplies whatever we take, whatever we offer to him. And that's really the summary of the story of missions. We had that this morning, of course. You're the light of the world. City set on a hill cannot be hidden. Let, therefore, your light shine. Any questions? Anything I say about India, you have to understand, is a broad generalization. It'd be like somebody asking you about America. Whatever you tell them, it's probably not true in some other part of the country, right? And so that's the same for India. It's a land of contrasts. It's a land of the old, as in very old. In New Delhi, near that one union office, they showed us a fort that was built by the Muslims in the 700s, and much of it is still there. Can you believe it? 700s. We think something 100 years old is ancient, right? 700s. And even this Taj Mahal, is 300 some years old, whatever, but just as solid it seems as ever. So it's a land of contrast, the people are so settled into the traditions that have been passed down from parent to child, whether it be health, whether it be, whatever. It's just hard for people to get away from some of that. And a Sunday pastor I ran into and talked to, he was telling about working with people and how they find the same problem, of course, that we do. How do you break people kind of free from their background? And he said what he observes is it's like they add our God to their gods. They have a repertoire of gods, so okay, well, yeah, sure, we'll add another one. He supposedly has power, so let's add him to what we have. where we're not thinking of that. We're thinking of this being the God, right? The Creator God, the one who can solve problems or work on our behalf, protect us or whatever. So, yeah. Okay, thank you for asking. First response to that is, we were told that if there was a baptism, we would not be there. It's that controlled that it would be better for the foreigners not to be present. Well, that was Timor-Leste. We're talking now about India. So Timor-Leste, there was no real issue. But India, with this Hindu cloud that's over everything, the locals didn't want foreigners to be present. So it was reported that they had 8 or 10 baptisms. I don't really know. My side, I heard there were quite a number of baptisms too, but I don't really know. What I do know is people came. Those were real pictures of real people that were coming night by night that I showed you of my site. So people were coming, people were listening, people were learning, people were growing. How they'll continue that is another challenge, because all they really have for infrastructure or resource is that Bible worker. I don't really know what her gifts are. She's a widow. So I do know my particular congregation, the section president said he was personally taking some interest in. So that may be a help. But how they'll continue what we began will tax them to the max, because it's a challenge. Yes? The back. So the way I understand the history, again, very generalization, there was a time when the Muslims controlled and really tried to dominate. But then there was like an uprising, whatever, and a resistance to that. And more or less, the Muslims were sent to Pakistan. So Pakistan, I wasn't there, but apparently Pakistan is sort of the Muslim country. Now, there are Muslims still in the country, no question. Absolutely. Muslim temples and so on, we saw. But I don't really know. I think most of the people I saw directly and worked with would be considered Hindu. The Hindu temples are everywhere, everywhere. I mean, I remember an industry, a business of some sort, big thing, but in the corner is their temple on their property, the business property, the factory property. Here's reserved a space for the temple, and so on and so on and so on. I mean, temples almost everywhere. An amazing, amazing thing. Yeah. Oh yeah, Spicer College. There may be others as well now. I don't. That was another area. I didn't get there. Big country. And the few days I had didn't spread that far. Travel inside the country is fairly reasonable. Train, they put us on the train from Chennai to New Delhi. No, that's not true. From Coimbatore to Chennai. Oh, that was nice. Fairly new train, but also just nice, comfortable seats, quiet, electric train, smooth, stop gently. I mean, it was a nice train, air conditioned, of course, big windows, you could see a lot. Of course, they didn't buy for us the cheapest seats either, but not the best either, so in the middle. So their transportation, train is a big means of transportation there. They have trains everywhere, literally. That's a big thing there. Still a lot of buses. Questions? Otherwise, we'll pray. in my church. Well, they would add more, I'm sure, but always the same issue, limitation. Didn't ask, but I would assume she'll be staying for at least an extended period of time. I would hope, because she's built a lot of relationships with people, and so I would think she would. The pastor that I showed you that translated for me, he had to go back to his district, but he was not from that area. Yes? Yeah, it's okay. Let's pray together before we go. 6:30. Father God, you have said that this message will go to all the world. We're doing our little part, each of us in our corner. Lord, it's exciting to see and hear what you're doing in other places. And it's not because of any person, it's because of your Holy Spirit and his power. And Father, we realize that we do our little part, but you multiply it. We work on the plan of addition. You work on the plan of multiplication. So Lord, we just present each of us to you. We just pray for wisdom to know best how to use the resources you've put in our hands to be able to advance your kingdom in the best way, the most efficient way possible. Lord, bless each of us now. The Sabbath is drawing to a close. Bless this new week as we launch into it, we pray. Thank you for your love. Thank you we could share together here today. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you each. Thanks for coming.